My man is here. Shobhan Saxena. He is an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, in a career spanning more than 30 years. Wow. He has reported from the Times of India, The Hindu, the Indian Express, and various other publications in India. Right now, he is an international correspondent for DD India, international channel on India's public broadcaster. Shobhan, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Morning, Jamal, and morning to all your listeners and viewers. I'm sorry for being late. Doing fine, yeah.
You're perfectly fine. Even the best of us are late sometimes. It's okay. It gave me time to finish my monologue. Donald Trump is losing his mind, and he is being torched. I'm sorry. He is being torched on social media right now for some of the things that he did, especially for Epstein and for the Ukraine conflict. But one of the other things that he's doing is reinvigorating his tariff war, not just on Europe, but on Brazil. But it's the reason he's going after Brazil that is the wild part. He is effectively trying to, I guess, threaten, influence, bully Brazil's judiciary and I guess government structure itself in order to not go after Bolsonaro. And the way he is going about doing this is trying to impart 50% tariffs or threatening to do so on August 1st on Brazil.
Yeah.
Now, that is astonishing. And I strongly suspect this is going to backfire magnificently because Lula has used this as a crafty politician that he is, as a political instrument to effectively say, we're a sovereign state. We are not, our government and our structures are not up to the whims of America. And something that he said at the BRICS meeting, we need to stop using the dollar. Like he was very clear. Like all of this dovetails. It's like all of that thrust of energy just goes right down that lane. Give me a take on this and give me what is being said in Brazil about this. I'm very curious.
Okay, let me try to put in this news in the context. What is happening? What has happened? Donald Trump has put the deadline of 9th of July as his deadline for having to sign trade deals with more than 100 countries. 9th July have come and passed, and he has signed trade deal with barely, you actually 4 or 5 countries, including the UK and Vietnam, but not with even close allies like Japan or South Korea, not with European Union, not with Canada, not with Mexico, not with India. So more than 100 countries, there are no trade deals happening. So deadline has passed. So when the deadline passed, what he did, he has to give a new headline, and he put new tariffs on many countries, including Japan and South Korea, which have very close partnership with the US.
Yes.
Canada, European Union, 35%. But exception was Brazil, 50%. Very high tariff. But also Jamal, you remember when this tariff war was going on with China, 50%, 35%, it went up to 145, something like 150%. And now it has come down to, 30%, 26%, 10%, right? And Donald Trump has announced there's a trade deal with China. There's no trade deal with China. They've agreed to have a trade deal. What are the details of a trade deal? Nobody knows. Okay, so this is how unfortunately the president of the United States is this way of functioning is completely erratic, And interestingly, what happened with Brazil, as you mentioned, it happened just 2 days after the BRICS summit ended in Rio de Janeiro, and there's some important decisions were taken at the meeting of the emerging countries, and he put 50% tariff on Brazil. But unlike other countries where he's saying that countries are ripping off US, which is complete nonsense, in my opinion. He put a political reason in case of Brazil, and that is the former president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, is not getting a fair trial, and he should be acquitted without a trial. Now, being an American, he should know the Brazilian system works just like American system. The judicial process and the administration, they're two completely different things. The government doesn't run the judicial process. It's run by judiciary, just like in America. The Supreme Court of Brazil does not respond to or does not to the president of Brazil. So anyway, to to putting pressure on the government does not help because government can't do anything about it. And the way, as you mentioned, the government of Brazil has reacted. They have completely refused point blank that they're going to give into this pressure. They're going to retaliate with their own tariffs. And very interestingly, I mean, I've been watching news here. The country, the whole of Brazil, some exceptions, the hardcore Bolsonaro supporters, but the country is united behind the government. Even
Yeah.
the mainstream media, which is very critical of President Lula, or which is actually not critical, they keep attacking the government on various issues. Even they are united behind the government. They have criticized the U.S. One conservative newspaper here has called Trump style as mafia style. You know, that's really and other newspapers in like mainstream Globo and all have criticized the U.S. government. And you know, on the internet, you know, Brazils are the world champions in making fun and creating memes, and they're going after the Americans, they're going after US, they're going after Trump. So, and I think the government, the commercial sector, the business sector, they're all united that they're not going to accept this. So as far as if Donald Trump was trying to put pressure on the Brazilian government, that was completely backfired. It's not going to work. Also, I think politically, it's going to help Lula actually, because Lula is in a much stronger position now because he has managed to unite the country on this issue of tariffs. So I don't know what was the strategy behind Donald Trump's decision. And even he has said that he'll talk to Lula about this tariffs at some point, but not right now. So I think this is the typical Trump style issue a threat, impose sanctions, or taxes, high tariffs, then do some discussions, roll it back, or increase it more, and after some time, nothing happens. So this is what really is happening here.
If I had to guess, there was no strategy behind it. I don't think Trump works in the context of a strategy per se. I think he thinks bullying is the strategy. Meaning, I think he thinks bullying in this mafia style is a means to an end, missing the fact that these are countries and that there are politics in these countries that provoke certain, let's say, responses to that. Any country worth its salt will bristle at an idea that you're telling them what they should and shouldn't do in their own country. It's just outrageous. The thing is, though, if I had to guess, this has more to do with BRICS than it does with Bolsonaro. I think Donald Trump is very freaked out by the notion of de-dollarization. And if you remember, Lula, during the BRICS summit, made that speech effectively saying we need to get rid of the dollar. We need to stop using the dollar. He was very clear. We need to come up with our own currency or a basket of currencies, whatever BRICS is going to use. And we need to do that in order to stop the US from doing stuff just like this. And when Trump comes out with this, this dovetails perfectly into it. If I'm not mistaken, Lula even said, look, we have 40, 50% of the world's economy in BRICS. We need to join together in order to push back, in order to punish the United States for doing this. Am I remembering that right? Or did I get that right?
Yeah, I think it is interesting, Jamal, that Donald Trump is the first US president who talks about BRICS, actually.
Yes.
No other American president has even spoken about it. I don't remember Biden or Obama or, ever mentioning, or not Bush. It was not created during the time of Bush. Obama ever mentioning BRICS. So I think the Western attitude towards BRICS has been ignore it or make fun of it or mock it. But what is being taken seriously? That is the good news. Donald Trump is talking about it, is being taken seriously. We have to remember, Lutnick, I think, who's the Trade Secretary of the U.S., I think at a conference in fireside chat in U.S., he had mentioned that India being part of BRICS is a problem for the U.S. And then Donald Trump said, any countries who does any deal with BRICS, he will impose 10% taxes on that country. He said that during the when BRICS summit was going on in Rio de Janeiro, and now this tariffs against Brazil. This clearly shows that they are afraid of BRICS. The Indian position has been very clear from the beginning that BRICS is not an anti-American alliance. It's not an anti-Western alliance. The BRICS is trying to find its own place in the world. That is BRICS position. The emerging countries and developing countries need to have more voice, need to have more say how the international order works. That is the agenda of BRICS. But I think there, as you mentioned, the problem of de-dollarization, or BRICS countries doing more trade with each other in their own
Right.
national currencies, they see this as a threat. And he's just using this as an excuse to impose more tariffs on BRICS countries. He's being going very, very, very strongly after South Africa. Also remember, China, he already has a trade war. It's more or less settled. Let's see what will happen. With India, they have not signed a trade deal as yet. The Indian side has very clearly said deadlines don't work with us. What is more important for us is the national interest. And India will protect its market. India will protect its farmers. India will not so easily allow GM modified products into India. So I think there are very, very complicated issues involved here. And these issues cannot be solved by through posts on social media, on Twitter, or through social wherever. It really doesn't help. But the unity of the BRICS countries, the decisions they are taking, and the implications in the future for the international financial system, also the world order. I think that is kind of creating some panic in Washington, and we're seeing the result of in the form of these kind of decisions being taken. These decisions are not going to help anyone. And the U.S. has a surplus with Brazil. How can you have more tariffs against a country with which you have a surplus? The US is the only country which has a surplus with Brazil. Brazil has surplus with China. Can you believe it? For more than
Wow.
45, $50 billion. Yeah. Brazil has surplus with most of its trading partners because their economy is commodities economy. They sell sugar, coffee, iron ore all over the world, and they have
Mhm.
surplus with majority of their partners. But the U.S. has a surplus with with Brazil. So if you impose more tariffs on Brazil, I think it's going to it's going to hurt U.S. more than it's going to hurt Brazil actually.
Well, it is. The prices have gone up. Trump doesn't really care about that because habitual liars lie. And if reality doesn't line up with what you want, you just lie. And so I don't think he cares about that. I mean, keep in mind, the only reason he backed off on the world trade war that he was waging was because the bond market started flipping out and the faith and credit in the US dollar plummeted. And people started kind of losing their minds saying, hey, you got to stop, you got to stop, you got to stop. That was the thing that made him stop, not that he was hurting Americans in it. So he doesn't care about that. I mean, the man
Yeah.
is a sociopath. I don't think he cares. I think for him, and I think for the US, and honestly for BRICS, who I think is, look, I think BRICS is a fantastic organization for multipolarity. They may say this has nothing to do with America. They may say this has nothing to do with the current financial order. But that is just what they say. They know that the only reason those countries came together, I can show you the clip of Joe Biden saying, hey, why don't you guys work with so and so and so and so? And it was basically naming the initial BRIC countries. And Joe Biden was saying it flippantly because in his mind, these countries will never get together. Their interests are not aligned. They're on different parts of the globe. And lo and behold, X number of years later, these countries come up with BRICS. Meaning, if the financial system, in the way that the financial system currently worked, was fair and just to everybody, and it wasn't based on this kind of rules-based order, BRICS wouldn't exist. Or do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think also, Jamal, the most of the international institutions, they have failed the emerging countries. I mean, look, the UN. What is UN doing here?
Exactly. But that's my
World Trade
point.
Organization. Where's the World Trade Organization where tariff war is going in the world.
But
This is
Shobhan,
an
that's my
issue.
point. That's my point. That the reality of it is that BRICS may say, look, we are just trying to be fair to, let's say, with another point of view and a financial system and work to
Yeah,
the betterment of the global South. But by definition of that, meaning, let's say if all of that's true, by definition, a country that believes in zero sum, meaning we win, you lose, can't
yes.
tolerate an organization like BRICS. The very existence of it creates a problem. It's kind of like Iran, right? When the US is looking at Iran, it's not about nukes. It's not about, enrichment. It's about, we don't want you to breathe. We don't want you, we don't want your lungs taking in oxygen. We don't want you to exist. It's that we need your government to be a failed state. It's not about, how do I negotiate in the context of I need you to not exist. And that's the premise of the negotiation. I'm saying that's BRICS for the US. We need you to not exist. We don't like being a second fiddle in this global game of economics. We don't want you taking 50, 60% of the share of the other economies of the world. We don't want it.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, look at the perspective of the BRICS countries and the US, completely different.
Yes.
What was the theme of the BRICS summit in Rio? Development with sustainability. Now, I don't think in the US anyone is interested in development with sustainability. The BRICS leaders, they spoke about how to combat poverty, how to combat problem of food insecurity. These are important issues of BRICS countries, and I think the division exists here because the priorities of BRICS countries are different from the priorities of the United States. We have to tackle the problems of poverty, famine, or food insecurity, artificial intelligence, some very very important accords. Pacts
Mhm.
were signed at the BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro. So, I mean, and this is just a reaction, a negative reaction, that why are these countries are meeting together? Why are they discussing these issues? As I was saying, UN has really failed the majority of the world. And same as WTO is non-existent at the moment. IMF and World Bank, the developing countries do not have very good experience with these institutions. But
Yes.
BRICS Bank is something different. The more and more countries from Africa, Latin America, and Asia, they want to associate themselves with the BRICS Bank, the new developed bank. So obviously, a new kind of world order is emerging, a multipolar world that we say, and with strong poles like in China, India, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, even countries like from Middle East, Indonesia. I think the people do not talk about such countries. Indonesia is a country of 260 million people. The Indonesian president was here at the BRICS summit. Is one of the fastest growing economies. A young country, Asian country. So I think there's a kind of churning happening in the international order. These countries are trying to create something different, which will benefit them, which will benefit their agenda. That
Wow.
you have a young population, big markets, so you have a lot of positives also. Also, in the past 20, 30 years, we know the center of gravity of the world economy has clearly shifted towards Asia, towards
Yeah.
East. Clearly, China being the main driver of the that engine, but also countries like India has made enormous contribution. India today is the fourth largest economy in the world. It's
Wow.
not a joke. So,
Yeah.
and then you have Japan has been there for a long time, and countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, all these countries are in Asia. So we are seeing a shift, in a major shift in the focus of the world economy, not towards Asia, but also other emerging countries. Africa has tremendous potential. Africa is growing a lot. A lot of interesting things happening in Africa, also in South America. And this is you can't stop it. This is the nature of things. These countries have been suppressed and oppressed for a long time, and they have the opportunity, and they're growing, and the country is changing. So by retaliating through tariffs or taxes, or it's not going to work. And it's not going to work because the countries are not going to accept it. They will protect their national interest, like Brazil is trying to do. It's very clear to Brazil that these sanctions are an attack on Brazil's national interest. And when there's a unity between the government and the commercial sector and business sector, everyone's talking the same language, and it means they understand what's happening. People understand the game, what's
Yep.
going on here, right?
They're united.
And you can't do business. You can't use the threats of sanctions with the business partners. I think this is at some stage is going to fire back. I mean, look at Europe. I mean, he's imposed 35% tariffs on Europe. On one hand, you have the security pact and defense pact and NATO and alliance for democracy, alliance for Ukraine, everything. And then you're imposing 35% tariff on them. And Macron today said, the French president, that they're going to hit back. They're going to protect their interests. And which country or which trade bloc will not protect their interest? Everyone will, and everyone should. So let's see what's going to happen.
Shobhan, this may be controversial, but I'm all for it. Oh, hit everybody with sanctions. Do it all at once. Hit Europe, hit Brazil, oh, hit Russia, hit everybody. I mean, they're talking about what, 500% sanctions on secondary trade of Russian oil. So India, 500% sanctions, China, 500% sanctions, Saudi Arabia, 500% sanctions. I want to see it. Because for me, this is an acceleration that the world needs to grow the F up, that they need to realize. I mean, the US and the way that the US has behaved in the world has been atrocious, whether it started in provoking these wars or whether it's the stupid trade war. And at some point, the world need to realize, okay, this is not a viable actor. This is a rogue state. And we have encouraged it to be a rogue state by giving it all of the oxygen in the world in the way that it operates. And it needs to stop. I mean, we have been destroying UN bodies that we helped create in order to protect either Israel, in order to come up with this kind of story about Ukraine that's just farcical. And we've been doing it with the world, for the most part, standing by and allowing it to happen. And so if the US is going to go for rogue, what do you say, never go full retarded in Tropic Thunder, is I'm a dude disguised as a dude playing another dude. Okay, fair enough. Play that guy, play that role. And let's see if the rest of the world accepts that role of the US behaving this way with the mask off. So I'm all for it. It's not that I think that it's great. It's the opposite. I think that it's so bad that I agree with you that countries at some point are going to, with the exception of Europe, they're vassals. But other countries that believe in some level of sovereignty and independence are going to say this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. I think it's going to backfire. I could be wrong. I think it's going to backfire. Bolsonaro is the one I'm super curious. That is fascinating to me. What do you think he is thinking in this moment? I mean, Donald Trump has effectively put a huge spotlight on him to all of Brazil. And it comes across as if, kind of like the Netanyahu thing, but Brazil is not Israel. Whereas in Israel, they may say, okay, fair enough, the US wants XYZ. In this case, though, it looks like Trump's buddy, Bolsonaro, is trying to get off by using the US to impose its will on Brazil, and is trying to potentially even damage Brazil at the behest of Bolsonaro. This can't be good for him. Like if I was him, I'd be calling Trump saying, stop, stop. You're putting a spotlight on me, stop. Well, give me your thoughts on this. What is the commentary in Brazil on Bolsonaro with Donald Trump effectively trying to free Bolsonaro from any kind of criminal prosecution?
Yeah, watching the commentary here and reading the comments here in media and what people are saying on television, Trump is not helping Bolsonaro. I think this he's not done him a favor. Can you believe that you are asking your country to be put under sanctions or tariffs because you want to get off the hook? It hasn't gone down. It hasn't gone down well at all, even among his supporters. Some of his supporters, and as I said before, the conservative media, which is not a friend of President Lula at all, they have taken a very strong position here. They're criticizing not just Trump, they're criticizing the American government and the whole American attitude towards Brazil. So it's not going to, and the judiciary has been very clear. I think yesterday the Supreme Court Chief Justice, he issued a statement that you don't tell us what to do, and that's true. I mean, of any world leader, a president of any country has no business telling the president of the country or judiciary of any other country, how to behave, what to do. This is a clear interference in the internal domestic affairs and politics of a sovereign country. I think the phrase that has been trending in Brazil is sovereignty. People are talking about sovereignty, even people who don't really care about such things, but they've taken it really, really seriously. I mean, and coming back to your point about what you're saying about it will backfire. No country in the world actually wants to pick up a fight with the US directly because they know US can do a lot of damage financially and otherwise. But at the same time, I think there's a realization in the world that to do business with the US uh, is a very risky thing. People are realizing it. And also, like US has just 5% of the global population, you know. So if I have to, the countries can looking at selling things to other 95%. Of course, the other 95% may not have the same purchasing power as the US, and they do not have dollar. But if you think in terms of volumes, it will work because I think in business and trade, people want some kind of reliability. If we have an unreliable business partner, which is constantly threatening you with sanctions and more taxes and trade deals or not doing trade deals, this will happen, that will happen. As you mentioned, the issue of 500% tariffs against in India or other countries if they're buying Russian oil. At the time when you were discussing a trade deal with India, can you believe
Yeah.
what they're feeling about here?
Yeah.
How can they? So I think there's an issue of trust here, and the a very good example of this is the Chinese car BYD, the electric vehicle, which cannot be sold in the US for obvious reasons. But China is selling the
So
car.
good. It's so good of
Yeah,
a car.
yeah,
Yeah.
because the car is this cannot be sold because it's so good, actually. And that car is being sold all over the world, including in India. And Brazil, I've seen in Sao Paulo, there's so many showrooms they've opened, and people look at that car with great admiration. So you don't need to sell your car in US to be a successful business. It's a very, very big world, and I think that realization is settling in around the world. That because you're sending ships to US container ships with whatever fish or fruit, and those ships are stuck on the sea because of the sanctions. So the businesses are going to. It's happening right now with Brazil. The ships are stuck because they don't know what to do with the goods. They cannot
Are
go there.
they? I didn't
Yes,
know that,
yes,
by the way.
yes,
Wait,
yes, yes.
just so I'm clear, you said ships are stuck at sea because they can't.
Because
They,
because sanctions have been announced, and they don't know what to do. They cannot come back to Brazil, and if they stay on the sea, the fish is going to go. It's going to rot. You know.
interesting.
Yeah. This happened with China also, and this happened with other countries also. Because once they announce the sanctions, by the time you reach there, and then sanctions will be in place, unless he again changes the deadline. So this kind of uncertainty, I think the business and trade people, one thing they don't like is uncertainty. The markets don't like uncertainty. They want to be. If I have shipped my goods to some country at certain price, I would like it to reach that country at that same price, not at a different price. This is going to create a complete mess. So this is what is being discussed here. And when you put such high level of tariffs against a country, you're talking of creating unemployment. You're actually hitting that country's economy. Of course, it will have an impact in US as well, because who pays the tariff ultimately is American people, American buyer, or the American businesses. They're going to receive the goods that they're going to buy it. So it's not going to help anyone. So the sanctions are not in the interest of any country, and using those sanctions to, you know, as a threat to interfere in the domestic affairs, or to threaten, an international group of emerging countries. I don't think it's very sensible politics, and it's not going to really help America's cause,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I get targeted protection of an industry. I mean, part of the reason we don't let China sell their cars here is because the cars are too good and our markets can't compete. But this is kind of ironic because the whole capitalistic thing is we make better products when you have competition. And if your product is better, your product gets bought at a certain price point. But when it comes down to it in real terms, it's like, hey, screw that. That's theory.
Yeah.
In reality, we need to protect our cars. So I get it on some level, right? That auto industry is a big deal in the United States. We want to maintain it. We want to keep it. And BYD's cars are just fantastic. I mean, like we sell Teslas here, but Teslas compete with BYD cars in China. And, it's okay in comparison to BYD's. But China's been able to produce a car for cheaper with more products in that car in a way that if we saw it as Americans, we would feel like, oh my God, is that what you're keeping from us? Like it's a fantastic car. I mean, China, man, their technological accomplishment has been astonishing, and we don't see it here. We just don't see it. If we had the opportunity to look, okay, that's a whole nother story. I was going to say, what is the guy named IC Speed or iSpeed or whatever his name is a YouTuber who went to China, and the stuff that he's seeing in China seems to be blowing his mind. Like he's flying in auto taxis where you go in, you hit a button, and it takes you to your location from point A to point B. He's in cars that are parking themselves. I mean, like, it's just astonishing stuff. Like you're walking in the middle of nowhere and a drone drops the delivery and then flies away. Like, it's just amazing stuff that they've been able to accomplish in some of these countries or some of these states. One last point before I let you go. India. Got to talk about India. There is I'm not going to call it a rumor. I'm going to call it let me say it this way. In NATO, or not NATO, in the European Union, Britain was looked at as a fly in the ointment in the European Union. It was looked at as, okay, this is very close to the US. Britain is not even using the euro, it's using the pound. And all things being equal, it is America's gateway into influencing EU policy. There is a fear, and I'm going to call it a fear, that India on some level is playing that role in BRICS. And I want to ask you, A, do you agree that that's a fear that is floating out there? And B, do you think it has any credibility?
No, I don't. I have heard those rumors before that India is a weakling in BRICS, and we've had a discussion about it. And I was at the BRICS.
Excuse me, Shobhan, not rumor. I'm going to go with fear. Because rumor is different, right? Rumor is like so-and-so is doing something. I'm going to say fear because I'm not going to give it its full validity of a quote-unquote rumor. I'm just going to say there. Because look, BRICS, to be fair to those people, and maybe I am one of those people, BRICS is this vision of multipolarity. It is what multipolarity is effectively resting on, BRICS, because there is nothing else. Yeah. And you can imagine that anything that people want to come into fruition, there's fears around it. My mom loved my grandmother to death. And yet my grandmother had a fear deep within her that she was going to somehow be left alone. Okay, this was nonsense. But it's the threat of it that makes fear exist. And I'm saying that's where people are with thinking, okay, India doesn't seem to be on the bandwagon of the one currency. India seems to be trying to make a deal with the US, which is going to be a stalking horse for influence in the BRICS. This is where this stuff is coming from. Give me your take on this. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to nail that down. I don't want to call it a rumor. I'm going to go with the fear.
Okay. So I was at the BRICS summit in Rio. And I'm not saying other world leaders are not important, but the two most important leaders at this BRICS summit were President Lula of Brazil and Prime Minister Modi of India. They were in the center stage, And after that, they had a bilateral meeting in Brasilia that really went very well. India participated with great enthusiasm wholeheartedly in the whole BRICS agenda, including the statement on Iran and Gaza and everything. Look, India stands for few things. It should be very clear. And it's nothing new. India's always stood for this. The first thing, the voice of Global South. India has been a voice of Global South since independence. It's not now. And I think in the recent years, it has become more profound. India, at the G20 summit, which happened in India 23, India made its position very clear that the global south needs to have more voice, more force in the world. That is one thing. The second thing is multipolar world. I mean, if you look at the statements from India, coming from the Indian leadership, especially the foreign ministry in the recent years, India has emphasized again and again that India stands for a multipolar world. Okay, Jamal, look, India benefits from it. India is the biggest country in the world, or we are the world's largest democracy. And if there's a multipolar world, India will emerge as an important pole of this world.
Yes.
In the Western media, just before the BRICS summit, I saw some stories which mentioned BRICS as a China-backed group. So they want to, so they want to create a narrative that somehow this BRICS group is backed, is a some part of Chinese strategies, and other countries are not equal participants in it. And that is the irony, because this is one organization where all the members, and principally the founding members, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they completely equal partners. No country dominates the country because they have a common agenda. As I said, the agenda of the BRICS summit this year was development with sustainability, combating poverty, combating food insecurity, all these issues, which are not the issues of European Union or Canada or United States. These are issues very typical of emerging countries and developing countries. And I mean, India and China, of course, they have the differences. We had a water conflict, and they may not agree on a lot of issues, and there could be rivalry for a place in Asia. But when it comes to these fundamental issues of emerging countries, there's no disagreement between India and China. Like there's no disagreement between India and Brazil, or India and South Africa, or Brazil and China with South Africa, because
Same.
we have to see this is not NATO. We're not creating a NATO, which is a group of course, European countries and US, but everybody knows NATO is dominated by the US. The European countries have very little say in the affairs of NATO. It's open secret. But the BRICS doesn't work like that. It's a group of emerging countries who are all equal partners. And the next BRICS presidency is going to be with India in 2026. President Lula has passed on it to PM Modi, and the next BRICS summit will happen in India. And all the decisions taken at this BRICS summit will be taken further. And India has been very excited about the inclusion of new partners, new members in the group. It's all there. The number of BRICS countries now is 11. The other countries which are associated members, they're not complete full-fledged members, but they may happen, maybe probably next summit or later. To say that, so of course, India has, at the same time, has a strategic partnership with the US. India is going to do a trade deal with the US. They're trying to do, as other countries are trying to do as well. But I don't think in the mind of the foreign policy pundits in India, or leaders of India, there's any contradiction here, because India has always believed in the recent decades in the policy of multi-alignment, that you have to work with all the countries in the world. India is trying to do a trade deal with the European Union for several years. It hasn't happened. Okay. Also with Mercosur, which is the South American kind of trade pact, India is trying to do a deal with them as well. So when the economy is globalized, everyone is connected. You have to work with everyone, not at but keeping in mind your national interest. And what is national interest? India's national interest is more aligned with the other countries of global south. India's national interest is about creating a multipolar world, because India is a strong country. Of course, we have a lot of problems at home, like uh,
Everybody
poverty
does.
and things like that. Of course, social problems. But India is a growing economy. India has a vision. India even has an aspiration of a, a very important global player. And you can't become a global player by being a lackey of any country, or
Right.
any country in the world. It could be so. I think BRICS is an ideal platform for India, and India's participation in BRICS has been wholeheartedly with great enthusiasm. I've seen it myself, in Rio and other places. I've attended BRICS summits before, and I think India is going to be there as a strong member uh, of the BRICS group. And without India, there's no BRICS. There's only one vowel in BRICS, and that is India.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I accept that. And I thank you for that. Because, like I said, that fear is floating out there. But one last point on this military, you pointed out that this is not a NATO organization. Your point was this is not led by one country. Agreed. And I don't think it would function well if it was. I get the feeling that BRICS is a repudiation of hegemons, not an acceptance of hegemons. But security has to be a part of that, right? Or do you think security needs to be a part of it? I know BRICS continuously says we're an economic union, which is true, but don't economic unions require the ability to defend those economic unions, especially when it's living in a hostile world that seems to be doing any and everything in its power to destroy that union? And to be very clear, what I mean by this is, in the same way you say there's no BRICS without India, I would argue there's no BRICS without China and Russia.
Yes.
And if you notice, the main nodes of BRICS, or some of the main nodes of BRICS, have been attacked. Meaning, it seems that what the West has come up with as a way of going after BRICS, meaning Europe, the United States, who are not part of BRICS, who I don't think could be part of BRICS, to be honest. I mean, these are NATO countries that have very specific geopolitical interests that they want to accomplish, and the destruction of Russia and China is a key part of those geopolitical interests. Does BRICS stand by and let that happen? Does that make sense? I hope that question makes sense. It's not that I want BRICS to be militarized. It's more so that I'm thinking it may not have a choice but to create some sort of security architecture to protect its member states.
Well, maybe in the future, in the long term. At the moment, of course, there's a discussion about security issues. The discussion about terrorism. There's a lot of discussion about peace initiatives and all that. Discussions are happening on various forums. And as I mentioned, the issue of Iran was discussed, and they condemned the attack on Iran because Iran is now a member of BRICS, and also about the Gaza, there was a statement. But I think if you're looking at some kind of BRICS countries creating a security architecture among themselves, I think it's too far-fetched at the moment, because when it has started in 2009, I think 2008, 2009, when first BRICS meeting happened, I mean, it was a bit about creating a new financial system, having more voice, not even political at that time.
Yeah.
But if you look slowly over the past, this was the 17th summit. In the past 17 years, the agenda has really expanded. It's no more just talk about the financial issues. It's about social issues, political issues. And at some point, I think there'll be more political cohesiveness, in my opinion, among the BRICS countries. I mean, Jamal, when the UN session happens in New York every year, September, the BRICS foreign ministers always meet there in a huddle. They always do a huddle there. At the G20 also, BRICS leaders do a separate meeting. So, some kind of political, it is also turning into some kind of political group slowly to have a collective position, that much. But if there'll be some kind of security alliance, I think we have to see in the future. I think it's too early to say that because the group is expanding.
Yeah.
They're getting new members. The new members will bring new vision, new views. And I think at some point discussion will start, and then they may decide about it, because BRICS is a work in progress. It's not like NATO. These countries got together, they signed a pact, and it's done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's not, or European Union. The creation of European Union, took decades.
Economic union.
It was just economic union. It's not even a military union. And now I no longer know what's the difference between European Union and NATO. I mean, they sound like one and the other. It's the same thing. But to create, it takes a long time too, because there's so many countries involved, and in different parts of the world. We're not talking about. That's why the BRICS is different. It's not ASEAN, the countries in one region, or European Union, countries of one. But these are countries from Latin America to Africa to Asia. 3 continents. from Brazil, and now countries like Venezuela, Bolivia coming on board, till China. We're covering the whole world. So it's
Wow.
a it's something um, a very ambitious, but something the world needed. And I think the leaders of the BRICS countries, they realize the importance of it, and nobody is going to turn its back uh, on BRICS. And turning their back on BRICS will mean turning your back on your national interest.
Yeah, no, agreed. Shobhan, thank you for this, man. Great breakdown. I always appreciate these conversations. You are fantastic at this. You really are. And just so the audience will know, Shobhan Saxena, he is an Indian journalist based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, a career spanning more than 30 years. He has reported for the Times of India, the Hindi, the Indian Express, and various other publications in India. Right now, he is an international correspondent for DD India, the international channel of India's public broadcaster. You be safe. Thank you for this. Have a good one, okay?
Thank you very much, Amal. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye.
All